morning, listeners and viewers. My name is Riana Badenhorst, and I'm joined this morning by Kirsty Skully from Core Wealth Advisory Service in Cape Town. Kirsty is a certified financial planner professional, the chair-elect of the Financial Planning Institute of Southern Africa, and a senior financial planner at Core Wealth. Today, we are specifically talking about women and their financial planning. Women are more educated and successful than ever. But does that mean that they are taking control of their financial situation? So often, women feel disempowered about their finances. With gender pay gaps and career disruptions related to family responsibilities, they leave their long-term financial planning to their partners, but they handle the day-to-day budgeting of their households. Kirsty, you have over 30 years experience working with women and their finances. What are some of the most important points that you have learned over this time?
Thanks, Riana. Thanks for the opportunity. And yes, I guess in 30 years, there's been so much I've learned. But where does one start? And I think what we want to do today is really talk specifically, if we can, about women and financial planning. And as you've just mentioned, the gender pay gap, that is alive and well. Whether people want to admit that or not, it is still happening, unfortunately, certainly here in South Africa. And we just have to deal with it. And the point is that what happens is that because women are earning a bit less than their male counterparts, they have less amount of money available to save. But the other thing to remember is the fact that women also live longer. And it's definitely happening that more and more women are living at least into their 90s. And in fact, I think we should start doing financial planning until about the age of 100 nowadays. But women certainly are living longer. The statistic is that if you reach the age of 65, you are then most likely going to outlive a male by at least 2.5 years. So what does that really mean? In developed nations, that is really meaning that women would live on average to about 85.5, whilst men are only living until about 83. Now, if you beg to differ on that, just go to an old age home. Just go and have a look in that frail care as an example and look how many women are there versus how many men, and you will realize, yes, women definitely are living longer than men. And then the other thing about women in financial planning where I see a big difference is that when we're dealing with a woman who's a mother, we do see a significant difference than just a single woman comparing her to a man. Often when women are mothers, they are so much looking at how they can look after their children financially as well.
So Kirsty, if a woman comes to see you to do her financial planning, have you noticed that there's a difference in how women deal with their finances as opposed to men?
Riana, yes, I definitely do see a difference. I think women have got phenomenal organizational skills. We are able to organize our finances well, but what I do see is that I see that women organize the day-to-day financial planning well, but so often we see them neglecting the long-term planning. Why? Because they are just trying to live now and deal with all the expenses that they have as a family, and especially with the children in mind. And so they tend to be looking at how can they make sure they've got sufficient money for the children, to ensure that they've got extramurals, to ensure that they are saving for perhaps tertiary education, that sort of thing. And what they're doing is ultimately neglecting as a couple their long-term financial planning for something like such as retirement annuity. It's very important to realize that when you're saving for something like tertiary education, remember that your child, as a young adult, can always go to the bank and apply for a student loan. But once you have retired, you cannot go and apply for a loan for money to live on. So that is why retirement planning is more important than even planning for tertiary education for your children.
Thank you, Kirsty. And I've heard you mention the word couple. And my next question is this. Is it better for a woman to come to speak to you on her own about her finances, or do they have to come to you as a couple and you deal with them in a holistic way as a couple with their financial?
Again, very interesting question. Personally, as a financial planner, I like to deal with a couple. I think it's most appropriate because I like to work with them on what their goals are as a couple. If we don't discuss the goals, how are you ever going to achieve them? And it's very difficult if only the one party is actually planning for the goals. Now, I think what is important here is that if somebody who's listening to this conversation thinks, oh, I'd love to meet with, be it my husband or my wife, whatever, I don't want to talk about any heteronormative society at the moment, but whatever it is that they do decide on, if their partner has said, no, I don't want to go and see a financial planner, I'm going to suggest just do it yourself then. So as much as I like to see people as a couple, I would rather say, instead of neglecting it, rather actually make sure that you do meet with a financial planner, just in case one day, for whatever reason that is, you are left on your own. At least you'll be financially independent.
Yes, and it is important to have a look at your financial planning, even if it is as a single or as an individual. So let's go back to how do we as women start our journey on our financial planning? Where do we start?
What's the most important? People often come to me and they say, well, what is the most important? I can't afford to pay for everything. What is the most important? In my opinion, as a financial planner, I'm going to say the most important part about financial planning is that you have a will, that your will is up to date and that it's correctly documented. So what does a will allow you to do? Well, it's the obvious. A will allows you to specify who should inherit your assets. Okay, whether it's your children, whether it's an organization, whatever it is, you are able to specify who should inherit your assets. That's the first thing. The second thing a will allows you to do is it allows you to appoint an executor. What is an executor? The executor is the person who's going to administrate the winding up of your estate. They're going to ensure that whoever you've left money to or assets to gets that appropriately. They're going to ensure that all debt is paid off. They're going to ensure that all your accounts get closed. Now, who should you appoint as the executor? So a lot of people don't realize, and they think, oh, well, I'll just ask my husband or my wife to do it, or one of my children to do it. But I'm going to suggest that you always ensure that a professional is put down there as the executor on your estate. And personally, I would say choose a professional that you know. So it would be something like your financial planner, or it would be your attorney. One of those two are probably the most appropriate to choose. And I say this because this is not a job that you actually want to leave to your partner. It's not a fun job. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of standing in queues at the master's office, that sort of thing. It's a tough job and it needs to be done by a professional. Some people leave it to the banks. I'm going to give you a personal opinion here. I would not leave my estate to be wound up by the banks because just from my experience, they tend to take a lot longer. And remember, your spouse is most likely waiting, or your children are waiting for this to be done. They're waiting for money to come through to them. They're waiting for the emotional side of having your estate wound up. So get it done as soon as you can. And you know what? You can use your financial planner for this. Think about it this way. If you've trusted your financial planner throughout whilst you've been alive to look after your financial planning, surely you'll be able to trust him or her once you've passed away.
Sure, I have not realized how important it is to have a will in place. But what about other investments and policies? We all have a limited amount of money available, but surely this is something that we need to consider. What should we as women consider first when choosing the important areas that we need to spend our money on?
Yes. Well, in fact, I was just thinking now, there's a couple of other things I should also mention before I even answer that question, just about a will. So remember, with a will, you can specify a testamentary trust. Okay, that's for generally for minors who are going to inherit. And then what you do is you'd specify at what age they're able to receive the money. People often ask me, what is the most appropriate age? I generally recommend the age of 25, or that they get some of the money at 25 and perhaps a portion of it after that. So that's something there. The other thing is your bequests. You can specify who gets something. Maybe it's your wedding rings or your engagement ring, or maybe it's a weapon that needs to be passed on. And then also specify whether you'd like to be buried or cremated. But getting back to your question, Riana, as far as I know, there's only a limited amount of money. So what is the most important? As I said, get your will in place. The next thing I think is the most important part about financial planning is to ensure that you have a medical aid or a medical scheme. The correct term is to say it's a medical scheme, but I know a lot of people talk about their medical aids. And again, speak to your financial planner. Ensure that your financial planner has actually looked at your various circumstances based on, from a medical perspective, what is the most appropriate medical scheme for you to have. And don't forget, what about gap cover? Very important to have gap cover.
Kirsty, please remind us, what is gap cover?
Okay, so gap cover, very, very simple. Gap cover is there to pay the difference between the amount that the specialist charges and the amount that your medical scheme pays. Let me give you an example. Say, for example, you need to go into hospital, okay? That's very important, the hospital part. You need to go into hospital and you need to have an operation. And the doctor says to you, I'm going to charge you, call it 15,000 Rand for the operation to do it. And you go to your medical aid to get your pre-authorization. The medical aid says that's fine, but sorry, we are only going to pay 5,000 Rand. So guess what? That difference is 10,000 Rand, and you are going to be responsible for paying that 10,000 Rand. Now, this is where gap cover comes in. Gap cover will pay that difference, and they'll pay up to 500% of whatever the cost is, depending on the type of gap cover you take, of course. But gap cover is there to pay the difference, the gap, between what the medical scheme pays and what the specialist charges. But please remember, it's almost always only for in-hospital expenses. So it's not going to be there in the event of just going off to the doctor because you've got flu or something like that.
Thank you on that. And would you recommend that we as women have something like income protection?
Very important. Income protection is fundamental in financial planning. Why? Why do I say this? Because if you can't work because of a medical reason, whatever that medical reason is, you no longer have an income. The rest of everything is going to fall flat. You're not going to be able to afford a medical aid. You're not going to be able to afford retirement savings or anything like that. And that is why income protection is so important. Now, remember, I'm giving some very general advice here. So I always say, please, you need to speak to your own financial planner about what is important for you, what's personally important. So this is just really generic advice, but go and sort out getting income protection so that in the event that you can't work, you know that you're going to get a payout. Now, remember, with income protection generally pays up to 75% of whatever it is that you earn, okay? What I love about income protection is that that amount that actually gets paid to you, there's no tax that gets paid, that needs to be paid on that. So what comes into your bank account is there for you to spend as such. But remember that it is only going to cover you up until, generally speaking, the age of 65. So therefore, if you are in a claim state, in other words, you're benefiting from income protection and getting that monthly, you need to still, from that money, be saving for your retirement. Because once it comes to 65, the income protection is going to come to an end. So you need to ensure that by then you've actually saved sufficient for your retirement. And that's it.
So let's recap. Firstly, we need to make sure that we've got an updated will. Secondly, we must make sure that we've got a medical aid and gap cover. Thirdly, we need to make sure that we've got income protection. What else would you suggest that we have in place for our financial plan?
I think One of the big things I like to help my clients with is ensuring that they get their debt paid off as soon as possible. Debt costs us money. Debt is like a mountain on your shoulders. It's painful. We want to get that paid so that you can start saving and achieving those fun goals as such in life. So when it comes to debt, it is important that if you've got debt, that you have cover in the event of your death so that your debt can be paid off. Now, this is where we talk about life cover. Okay, so not everybody needs life cover, and please don't let anybody fool you. If you do not have any debt, if you do not have any dependents, do you really need life cover? Just ask yourself that. So I always ensure that my clients who've got debt or who've got dependents who will need an income if the client passes away, that there is life cover at that stage. So life cover, that's where it comes in. The other thing that you can consider, another thing, is disability cover. So when I'm talking about disability cover, I'm talking about lump sum disability cover. So the question is, how much lump sum disability cover should you have? Again, let's go back to the debt situation. Say, for example, you've got a home loan, and let's just give an example. The home loan is 3 million rand. You therefore need to have disability cover of at least 3 million rand so that in the event you're disabled, you will know that you can pay off your home loan, okay, get that done, and then you're going to have your monthly income protection. At least you can live on that. It is much more expensive to live if you're disabled than just a normal able-bodied person. So ensure that your disability cover that you've got, your lump sum disability cover, will be enough to at least cover all your debt, and then also have a little bit extra. The reason why I say I have a little bit extra is because what about things like if you're now disabled and you've got a wheelchair and you need ramps built to get into your home? Maybe you need a special hoist which will put you in the bath or in the shower or on the toilet, that sort of thing. You need all those, so there's going to be extra expenses in the event of a disability. So I would always say have a little bit extra when we're talking about lump sum disability cover. The other thing that's very important is that you have cover for a critical illness or dread disease. People call it a severe illness or critical illness or dread disease cover, different things. I generally recommend at least R1 million, and that is if you've got a medical aid, because this is for expenses such as when we talk about dread disease cover, it means in the event that you get something like you have a heart attack, or you have cancer, or you have a stroke, or it could be a kidney failure or Alzheimer's. There's probably around about 30 different dread diseases. So you want to know that you've got a lump sum of money that pays out, and you can use it for anything. You can use it for paying off medical expenses that the medical aid didn't cover, or you could use it for just recuperating because you can't work. You might even just need to go to a facility where you recuperate that the medical aid doesn't pay for. So that's where dread disease comes in, and dread disease cover.
I guess next we need to look at savings. How important is savings to us?
Well, when it comes to savings, I think the number one thing that you should be saving for is retirement. Vitally important that we get retirement savings going. And the earlier you start, the less you need to save. It sounds a little bit cliched, but that is the fact. The earlier you start, the less you need to save. So how much do you need to save? Well, the statistics are that you need to save 15% of whatever you earn in order to retire with about 80% of what you're earning. But there's a catch on this one. The catch is that you need to start saving 15% from the age of 25. Now, I meet with a variety of clients, and I can tell you almost none of them have saved 15% from the age of 25. So if you are older than 25 and you haven't been doing that, it's going to be more than 15% that you need to be saving. So again, meet with a financial planner. A financial planner will be able to calculate based on how much you've already saved and based on what your goal is that you want to achieve. They'll be able to calculate for you exactly how much you should be saving. Don't be an ostrich in the sand with your head on this. You need to get the correct amount of savings. So that's as far as retirement savings goes. The other thing that's always very close to my heart is that you have an emergency fund. Because when things hit the fan, you need to know you've got some money that you can call on. I do not recommend you call on your credit card for that sort of thing. Have the money set aside in an emergency fund so that you can access it whenever you need to access it. Something else when it comes to savings, don't forget about tax-free savings accounts. This is a fantastic benefit that our government gives us. A tax-free savings account allows us to save with no tax on the interest, no tax on the dividends, and no tax on capital gains. Okay, what a fantastic benefit. Why is not everybody using it? Now remember with the tax-free savings account is that you can put in up to 36,000 Rand a year on this. That means you could be paying up to 3,000 Rand a month into a tax-free savings account. There is a maximum at the moment of 500,000 Rand that can be put in, but I do suspect that at some stage when we get nearer that stage that they'll remove that 500,000 Rand limit and you'll be able to continue saving. But remember that a tax-free savings account is ideal for a long-term savings. I never recommend you put it in with something that you keep withdrawing, because once you've withdrawn money, you can't put that same money back again. So the best way of using a tax-free savings account is to put your money in on a monthly basis, up to 3,000 Rand a month, and you do that all the way through to retirement. And once you get to retirement, you can then start drawing a tax-free income from that money. And let's face it, where else can you draw a tax-free income? So definitely tax-free incomes are something to think about. The other thing is, don't forget to try and save for your goals. Maybe you've got a goal as a family to go overseas in a couple of years' time. Maybe you've got a goal to do it on a regular basis. Maybe you've got a goal to buy a new home. Maybe you would like to be able to have your children go to tertiary education and you want to be able to afford that money before they even get to that sort of age. So there are a number of goals that people have. But again, speak to your financial planner to actually get that organized.
Kirsty, this can be quite complex, and I think trying to do it on your own is going to be a challenge because you need to know which savings vehicle to use. You need to know which is the most appropriate underlying funds to invest in. Sure, this sounds like a very complex situation.
Financial planning is complex. It is not simple. It needs to be done by a professional. And again, I would suggest you meet with a financial planner who's capable of helping you choose which are the most appropriate portfolios to be using, which is the most cost-effective place for you to be investing at. Let's face it, we don't want to spend any more money than we have to spend on fees. And there are ways around it. If you've got a financial planner who's able to look at a number of different companies, they can find for you the most appropriate place for you to be saving and the best way to do it.
Thank you, Kirsty. And do you have any last words for our ladies specifically?
You know what, especially as women, we so often end up having to look after our parents as they get older. Now, I don't know if this is just a sign of my age that I'm going to give you this recommendation, but one thing I have found, and it has been particularly obvious to me during lockdown, is the need for people to have power of attorney, in particular for their parents. We've seen so many cases of, especially as I say, during lockdown, where parents who have been in retirement villages have not been able to get out and go and sort out things that need to be sorted out. Perhaps it's their banking. Perhaps it's something to do with their cell phone or getting their telephone account changed or updated or whatever the case is. And it has been so much easier for our clients who have had power of attorney. And it's just something that has really come in my mind. Get a power of attorney for your parents so that you can help them. And obviously people don't give power of attorney to somebody that you don't trust. It's got to be, a power of attorney can only be given to somebody that you can trust. But a financial planner or an attorney can actually set up a power of attorney so it can really help you with your parents or maybe somebody else that you need to be able to help. So, but something that's very important in South Africa with a power of attorney is that you cannot use a power of attorney for somebody who's got dementia. So it's ideal really for somebody who perhaps can't get out, maybe due to lockdown, or maybe just because they are not well enough, they are too ill to actually be able to go to the bank or to be able to go to sort out whatever it is. So I do recommend that you think about that, get a power of attorney set up for your parents, and speak to your financial plan about doing that.
Kirsty, thank you so much. It was really, you gave us lots of food for thought. I mean, wills, savings, income protection, power of attorney. Who knew that financial planning covers so much? I really realize how important it is to consult with a financial planning professional. And to find such a professional, you can go